Hello, everyone. Welcome to Oakland Creates Art Makers interview series. Today we have Breena Nuñez, an amazing cartoonist, illustrator, and artist. I'm going to share my screen and then I'll have Breena introduce herself and talk a little bit about her work. And let me make sure I can find, of course, can't find let me find the slides really quickly. Here we go. Can you see the slides?
I see it saying loading. Oh, there I am.
Perfect. Okay, so Brina, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I can just quickly say that I'm a self-taught cartoonist, illustrator. My academic background is like in graphic design, in combination with some ethnic studies when I was an undergrad at SFSU. But after studying over there, I tried to get into design and I just felt like my heart just wanted to follow this path of like being my own, not my own boss, but just like owning my creativity and just experimenting with illustrations. Um, San Francisco Zine Fest definitely fostered a lot of that inspiration and just like the encouragement to really dive into that part of myself. And nowadays, I feel like I still draw, but now I'm I'm a parent, full-time parent, um, part-time adjunct professor at CCA teaching race and comics, which was started by Trinidad Escobar, which I found out sort of recently. And yeah, the comics that I make and have made are usually centered around identity, being Central American, descended person from the Bay Area. And lately, I just mostly make diary comics when I have the time between parenting and napping and just eating. And usually these little mini comics are about just observations I enjoy seeing in my kid.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm gonna jump into the interview questions, but I do have a couple images on the screen. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you have in the New Yorker, and as well as the Nib? And those I feel like are some of the slice of life comics that you're talking about.
Hmm. Yeah, so these were from the pandemic, like I want to say within 2020 or 2021. Um, the panel on the left side is um, it's from a bigger strip about how I dealt with social anxiety while like we were kind of reintegrating back into like the working world or like being in person again, but
Right.
still masking. And it just messed with my brain, just like being on lockdown, because I felt like I was just so out of practice with knowing how to communicate with people. And on the right side, I was just kind of making fun of being in shelter in place and not being exposed to the sunlight and just feeling like my melanin is like literally like disappearing.
Wow. You talked a little bit about San Francisco Zine Fest, and I know you tabled at East Bay Alternative Zine Fest several times. Can you talk a little bit about, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can see your face, a little bit about your experience with zine making and being a zine making artist?
Yeah. When I first started making zines, they were mostly like illustrative, like centered, and I did a lot of portraits, a lot of like cartoon characters. Yeah, like sometimes there was a theme in a zine, and sometimes I just wanted to make sort of like a sketchbook zine that I've seen in other people's works. And before I felt like brave enough to make a zine, I first attended Zine Fest with my friends Ruth Halloran and Rachel Millar, and I'm really thankful for that friendship because it really introduced me to um, something that I didn't realize had existed in the city for so many years, and let alone zine culture, like across the world, right? Um,
I think that's
and
kind of how I met you too, because
yes,
we tell the story of how you read. Was it your friend's zine where they worked at Sizzler, or was that your zine?
yeah, yeah, it was like a collab between me and Brenda Montano.
That was the funniest. I was new to zines too, and I felt like that was so relatable because my mom used to take little food from the buffet at the Sizzler in her purse home, and you were talking about something similar, and it was just hilarious because that space is mostly sort of middle class or upper class white people, and I felt like that's not something I had heard or seen in zine making yet, and so seeing brown people talking about real lived experiences that I can relate to was just, it was so amazing and refreshing, but it made me laugh. And I think that was the best part of it. And it's like, oh, I have to meet her, I have to meet these people. So that was awesome. And it was great introduction into meeting you too and your work. Yeah, that was just amazing time.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm really thankful for that memory. Like, and I think because Zine Fest is like, it's genuinely a beautiful like community to be a part of. And I feel like we've also had our experiences like traveling to Zine Fest together, like
I,
up north and in Albuquerque. Um, yeah, yeah. Like I really feel like y'all are just a very essential part of like who I am, and just like the people who remind me of like why I do these things,
right,
because what we do is really isolating, and
for sure.
sometimes I feel like we can also like get a little competitive,
Mm.
but at the same time, like just being at a zine fest and just encouraging the act of trading zines, like that's the stuff I love, like just
And also
usually
being
being
your
excited about other people's work.
but also being your true authentic self. I feel
Mhm,
like sometimes like you said, people become competitive and want to make work that speaks to everyone, and you can't always do that and be truthful and honest in your work. I think, not to say people should necessarily stay in one lane, but I think that how do you say that, authenticity
yeah.
sometimes is the spark that makes you want to pick up a zine and say, "Oh my God, I've had that experience too." How's that work with you? And it's so, I think it's best. I talked to Amal, he's young coconut on Instagram,
Yes, yes,
about
we're friends.
how, yeah, how that is such the glue that binds you together, is when you can build community around similar experiences. And I've had so many talks at my table about either sleep apnea or mental health, anxiety, depression, and stuff that you normally just wouldn't talk about. And it's such an open and, like you said, a lovely space, a safer space to talk about that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think definitely keep making stuff that is personal just to you, because other people, I feel like, can relate to it just more in a deeper way when it's really
Hmm.
comes from the heart rather than trying to make something that's commercial.
Hmm.
This is
Hmm.
my little 2 cents.
I love it.
Yeah, so let's talk about where you grew up. I know you're from the Bay, right?
Yes.
Did you grow up, San Francisco, South? I think you said South San Francisco, or where
Yeah, you're right.
exactly? Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
What was that like?
it's always a question that I tell people, like I have a hard time pinpointing where home is, because
Mhm.
like my family, um, one side came from El Salvador and the other side came from Guatemala, during different periods within like the nine I was gonna say the 19th century, like wrong era, but
The 90s?
um one side came to the mission around the 70s, and then the other
Okay.
side came a little bit much later, specifically before the Salvadoran War, Civil War broke out. And um, San Francisco, I feel like internally, like spiritually, it has been home to me because
Mm,
my family would always take us back to the mission, like all these really familiar um, businesses, restaurants that were an extension of like their homes in the US. But yeah, I grew up in South City. I lived in Daly City for a hot minute too, with like some extended family, like my like one of my older cousins and his and my tia, my auntie, and San Bruno, Millbrae. So I'm kind of like a peninsula kid. And
nice.
then, we lived in Oakland too, me and Lawrence, in Trinidad. And I always like to call Oakland my home too, because that was the first place I lived by myself without my family,
Mm,
to be closer to the job that I used to have in downtown Oakland. And that's where I met Amo years ago. And yeah, I still like ache a little bit for Oakland because I felt like I really grew into just who I am as like a person, like outside of my family's like culture. But yeah, to go back to the question, like what was it like to grow up? I guess in multiple places. South City, it felt very much like home, and at the same time I just felt like I was just a weird little kid. I had a lot of like guy friends. I was already like a little tomboy growing up, and I don't know, they just kept inviting me to play kickball, and I will always remember the teachers being really concerned about not socializing with kids the same gender as me.
wow.
Yeah, but I just had a lot of guy friends who liked sports, who liked Pokemon, Power Rangers, just things that I was also nerdy about. And I credit having an older brother because he's a gamer and he still is. So I always watched him play video games, and
Wow.
um, that's when we started collecting comics together too, like specifically Sonic the Hedgehog comics.
Nice. So, yeah, I have four older brothers, and definitely credit my um, one of my brothers to getting into art and drawing, but also my grandmother would take me around to museums and to all these different cultural events. Um, that's a good segue into, is there one particular um, thing that happened in one major event or even
Mm.
just something that you remember that inspired you to start creating art when you were younger? Maybe even, in childhood or maybe as an early artist, is there something that happened or something that changed your perspective that made you really want to pursue art making?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, I think in tandem with me just like enjoying drawing and trying to make my little goofy comics as a kid, um, I was the most like influenced to like just create this life or just try to find a way to be an artist was a field trip that we took in the third grade from my elementary school. I think I went to Sunshine Gardens at the time, in South City, and took a bus to Davie Symphony Hall in the city. And um, I I literally just felt such a visceral reaction, from listening to this classical music, and all of my guy friends were like, "Man, this is boring, stupid," and I'm trying to hide the fact that I really
Oh,
enjoyed all of it. I was just like, yeah, this is dumb. Like let's get out of here. Like, when is this over?
funny.
But I really just kept asking myself internally, like, how do I become like one of these people, like on the stage? Like, I love seeing a group of artists, musicians playing music together, making these beautiful sounds. So for the longest time, I studied music actually before I think I wanted to be more of an illustrator or some type of artist or working in animation. Because at the same time, I think what led to me being in love with music was just watching a lot of Disney movies and being in love with like the scores or like the soundtracks
Right.
in my favorite movies. So I would say the Davie Symphony Hall or just like the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra influenced me to be an artist.
Crazy, because I remember, I think fourth grade, going to the symphony. I know they all took us to San Francisco, so that's
Right.
a a class field trip in fourth grade, and I loved it too. Uh, I'm trying to remember if anybody cared that I enjoyed it. Nobody paid attention to me, but I did enjoy it too. So that's funny though that we all went to San Francisco Symphony for our field trips. Local Bay Area schools.
Right.